Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Bet365. Whenever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan is here from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget their YouTube channel where you can get a lot of extra content and Football at 4. Just search Inside the Birds. Adam Caplan on this Happy Hour Friday. How are you, sir?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bummed about the Phillies injuries, but based on the reporting that's out there, hopefully that stuff's correct. And Harper's injury hopefully will not be as serious as Trey Turner's hamstring issue. You know, groin strain, for Schwarber, actually, I'm dealing with an adductor strain currently from tennis, so I kind of know what it's like to get that thing stretched out and make sure you're right. So you can't think this guy's going to be back in 2 weeks, so you got to be careful with that. So it could be worse, Mike, with these injuries. And, boy, they really need, talking Phillies here, and we'll go to Eagles. I felt like all season they've needed a right-handed bat off the bench as an outfielder, and, boy, they really need one right now.
Yeah, the injury problems over there, and, of course, inevitable over 162, same like football, a lot of injuries there. One of the things we were going to talk about today during this edition of Football at 4 is some potential breakout players. And I know right before you came on, we were playing some of the audio from Darius Slay. He was on the Greenlight podcast with Chris Long, and he mentioned one that I thought was a pretty big surprise when he said he thinks Nolan Smith is going to be a surprise breakout player this year. And, it kind of stops you in your tracks, Adam, because you're thinking, all right, how many snaps can this guy get? What kind of role would Nolan Smith have?
Well, Mike, it's funny. I didn't know this because Josh told me before I came on here, your producer, that Nolan Smith was one of his guys, or maybe whatever he wanted to call it, a breakout player. Well, it just so happens our Thursday morning show, which you can get on YouTube or any platform anytime you want, folks, one of our breakout players was Nolan Smith. And first of all, he's going to play a lot more than last year. Brandon Graham won't play as much as he did last year, and Nolan Smith would be the first edge rusher off the bench. Now, as you point out, we don't know how many snaps that's going to be, but you can be a breakout player and play a third of the snaps. If your snaps are terrific, sure. If we all would agree, if we're watching, go, wow, that was a great play, and the data backs it up, sure. So I'm expecting, Mike, him to have a good role for this team. Again, we know who the edge rushers are going to be. Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat. Now, here's another thing I want to mention. Josh Sweat is very lucky that the Eagles were willing to bring him back. His second. We do this. You'll hear this now. I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. So we're doing our off-season interviews with Greg Cosell, who works for us, and we do this NFC East preview series. We just taped the Eagles. The Eagles will be out on, I think, July 11th. I could tell you, Greg, because he only goes by what he sees on the All-22. He flat out said Josh Sweat didn't play well. I won't give you everything that he said about Josh Sweat. So what does that tell me, Mike? Nolan Smith, who's under contract a lot longer than Josh Sweat, is Josh Sweat is on a one-year deal. Nolan Smith could cut into his playing time.
That would be interesting. That would be and look, by the way, Adam, that's a good thing. If they think, hey, we got to find ways to get Nolan Smith on the field, because a lot of people look at, hey, this guy was a first-round pick that they were excited about, made basically no to minimal impact last year.
None. Nolan Smith was only a special teams player. He wasn't given a chance to do it.
Oddly, he got a little bit extra playing time in the playoff game.
Because there was a reason for it, but I believe was there an injury? I remember that, but it might have been because it was a blowout. I think we probably went over that after that game, Mike. That was odd, but I think there was because the game was a blowout against Tampa, or somebody got hurt. But nevertheless, here's the thing about Josh Sweat. It's been a great story of development. Second half of last season was not good. They cut his pay, but they guaranteed his salary. It doesn't mean that he's going to play 90% of the snaps. He might wind up playing 60, maybe Nolan Smith plays 40. So this is something we're going to look at in training camp when we're there, what the rotation looks like.
I'm interested in that. That piqued my interest there from Darius there, bringing that up. He mentioned, by the way, before we get into some other breakout players that are in your mind, he did say something that I thought was interesting regarding Fangio and that, hey, he's a real quiet guy, yada, yada. And then at the end, he kind of threw in, if you're not playing well, he's going to sit you, and regardless of what your salary is. And I don't know if that was a little, shot over at his buddy across the way there that maybe they should have sat Bradbury last year, but salary indicated that he didn't sit. I thought that was kind of standoutish to me.
Well, yeah, but Bradbury did get benched. I mean, he got his playing time cut. So, yeah. But it's funny, if you really look at the veterans, I mean, who are the veterans that, remember, Fletcher Cox retired.
Yep.
What veterans are really there? Is Devin White is technically a vested veteran? Now, he's a guy I could see with the lack of discipline, overrunning plays, not being where he's supposed to. We know he's a good pass rusher, but he's there to make plays. If he does not make a play, sure, I could see him being benched. And by the way, I'm not saying like their inside backer group is going to be very good. They'll start two of them, but they have better players. Now we'll see how well that they play, and that's also going to be a good competition in training camp for that position.
All right, let's get a couple more. Now that we've been on the topic, of breakout players, surprise type of players, potential guys to keep an eye on this year, our listeners have been texting them in. Let's hear who you add to the mix.
All right, so Nolan Smith was my number 3. My number 2 guy is now a full-time starter at another position. Cam Jurgens now, it's his run. We know he only has 2 years of starting experience at center. That was in college. That's not here in the National Football League. This is his third year as an Eagle. He will now take over for Jason Kelce. He was the handpicked choice. It was never going to be Landon Dickerson. I don't know where that came from. People try to spread that rumor that that was shot down by someone I asked with the Eagles over the years. So, no, it was always going to be Jurgens. Isaac Seumalo, though, many years ago was a guy they thought maybe, but Isaac was better off at guard, and he actually was the Steelers' highest-graded offensive lineman last season. But getting back to Cam Jurgens, really good athlete, super smart. The concerns are injury history, pretty big going back to Nebraska. But they're going to be growing pains with this, Mike, with Cam Jurgens. You're just going to have to accept not every snap's going to be great. He doesn't have the proven intelligence of Jason Kelce, which means seeing stuff before the snap, getting you out of a bad play and stuff like that. Which is, he calling them protections and all that stuff. Jurgens will have to do it. He just doesn't have the experience doing it, and there's going to have to be some growing pains. But he's the long-term answer. And by the way, if he plays really well this season, you know what's coming. They'll be able to extend him after this season.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy, and I agree with you on Jurgens, is that, hey, the whole game changes for you now as the center, I don't want to say backing up, stepping in now as the new guy as opposed to being the right guard when you have that guy next year. Hopefully he rubbed off on him pretty good there. So, yeah, I would be in agreement on Jurgens as a guy. So who's at the top of your breakout list?
Yeah, just add to Jurgens. Look, if this was Jeff Statlin's guy, and you know that Kelce, by the way, was involved in that he got involved in terms of giving his opinion on Jurgens, and this is their handpicked successor, so I expect it to work. Now, the number one guy here it's sort of the obvious choice of the group, but let me explain why he's a breakout player. So Jaylen Carter for a majority of the season looked like, wow, it's kind of like he looks like he could be a superstar. And then really dropped off, Mike, where he was a complete non-factor for the final quarter or so of the season. Tate wasn't very good. Look, their whole D-line was awful. The front seven really just regressed significantly. But my thing is with Clint Hurt, the new D-line coach, one of the best in the NFL, the Seahawks thought so much of him. They promoted him from defensive line coach to coordinator. They're coming in with a new scheme there, so it didn't fit. So he's now in Philly. This guy is a disciplinarian, coaches hard. I expect these guys to respond. I'm expecting Jaylen Carter. Look, there's no more Fletcher Cox there to turn to. It's got to be him. You notice I don't have Jordan Davis as a breakout player. I don't trust the conditioning. I know he's in good shape now. That's great. He fooled me last year, Mike, because I'd heard all sorts of stuff from people close to the situation, how great he was doing. And, yeah, he got off to a great start. He really did. Then he completely faded after like 5 games. But Jaylen Carter's the guy, Mike. There's nowhere else to turn. He's got to be it. I feel strongly he could be better than Dexter Lawrence, who's a great football player. I'm not saying Aaron Donald, but a step below him. That's what he's got in his body. But it's really more up to him than the coaches. If he wants to be dominant and elite, he can do that.
That would be probably the biggest story for the Eagles, Adam, right? Is that can they find the guy who steps right in and becomes what Fletcher Cox gave you for the last 12 years.
Yeah, I mean, he'll mostly play the 3 technique. I mean, they'll move him around, play that 4-eye. He'll play the 7 technique, which is the Calais Campbell position. He'll play mostly 3. He's so explosive. It is kind of fascinating. 2 former teammates, Jordan Davis and Jaylen Carter, playing together here. It's kind of crazy. But look, if Jaylen Carter becomes an All-Pro this season, just think how much easier it makes it for Bryce Huff. If he's collapsed in the pocket, having an interior pass rusher, Mike, if you could have your druthers, you'd probably rather have an interior pass rusher like Cox than rather have, like Hassan Reddick. Not that Hassan Reddick was terrific. He was an All-Pro 2 years ago. But when you have an elite defensive tackle who could be a home wrecker, collapse the pocket, and make the quarterback move off his spot, quarterbacks hate it when they can't step up. That would be absolutely huge if Carter could do this.
All right, let me get a little honorable mention, someone that maybe no one else is thinking of, because Slay gave me Nolan Smith, and I was mildly surprised here. Who do you got?
All right, this one is a real stretch, and people are going to there's no way. Let me just explain. I've got Zack Baun as an honorable mention. Now, Zack has never been a starter in the National Football League. He was a pretty good pass rusher at Wisconsin. He played off-the-ball linebacker, outside linebacker, strong side linebacker for the Saints, mostly special teams player. Now, right now, again, we can only go by OTAs. They have him more. He didn't line up on the outside, from what I understand. It was mostly inside. He may not even win a starting job as one of the 2 inside backers, but if he does, Mike, I know coaches love guys who have size for that position, which he does, and he could blitz because Devin White can blitz. He's physical. He's a pretty sharp guy from what I hear. I'm just throwing this out there. If he winds up winning starting next to Devin White, or again, we don't, because Nakobe Dean was late. He's coming back from his foot surgery. He only got in late in OTAs. If Dean doesn't start and Baun does, this could be, and I'm not saying he's Andrew Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel had to play outside linebacker last season because the Dolphins had a lot of injuries, and that was a Fangio decision.
Yeah.
But maybe they do a little hybrid stuff with it. I'm intrigued by the signing. Obviously, somebody liked him, Mike. They just don't sign guys for the hell of it. Somebody in the Eagles personnel department really likes Zack Baun, and they may be onto something here. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Where Jaylen Carter, I feel very strongly it'll happen because of the coaching. It's just that there's got to be a reason why somebody thought he could be a good football player for them.
Yeah, I know that some people are intrigued hearing his name. Is he going to be, what was the running back last year that Sirianni mentioned his name and he went to the Colts?
Trey Sermon?
Trey Sermon. Remember, Sirianni mentioned his name and people were like, oh, maybe Sermon has a role on this team, and he never quite stuck around.
He got hurt. He actually got hurt. He had a knee injury. We actually put this out. He got a knee injury. It was a 2 or 3 week injury. So they wave injured him, and he could have come back, but he went to Indy. By the way, Trey Sermon is going to be the Colts' number 2 running back this season. So it's too bad the Eagles couldn't get him back. But no, I get what you mean. Here's what happened with Trey Sermon, Mike. 2 years ago when they claimed him off waivers, apparently he was one of their best practice players in 22, and then they brought him back, and unfortunately he got hurt, and they could have used him last season, but oh well.
All right, man. Well, yeah, and they probably could use him this season too, because they don't have a lot of running back quality depth on the. I mean, I don't say quality depth. We don't know the quality of the depth, but there's a lot of unknowns at that position. We'll say, right?
I would say over on the football team, Mike. Yes, running back behind Barkley is Gainwell going to be the 2. Will Shipley's a gifted back. Ty Davis-Price is a guy who's a 3rd-round pick again, former 3rd-round running back for the Niners. Eagles brought in. Then you look at the secondary. This is the deepest they've been in corner for years, but how good they are there, this is the real Fangio is here, so it's going to be a little different for them. The young kids now, they're very young up front, which is a good thing, but they're unproven. So, and then Bryce Huff, first time in his career as a full-time starter, Mike. It's funny, we talk about this. When Jeff and I put it together, our top 10 training camp questions, I just gave you 5 of them. I mean, that's where we are. Oh, one more thing. We taped this an incredible interview for our Patreon members with John DiFilippo, the former Eagles quarterback coach. You got to hear this. This was our best one we've done of like the 15 of them, just in terms of Hurts from last season, what they need to do to get him back on track, the number 3 receiver and the importance of it, which is going to be super important with this scheme because the 3rd receiver in this offense will be used. We went over a lot of stuff. I thought it was fascinating. Patreon.com/InsideTheBirds if you want to join.
I love the DiFilippo ones are some of my favorites.
Great guy.
He's really good. Yeah. Is he a guy? Is he trying to do some more broadcasting or what?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to get him in. I'm trying to get him in at Sirius NFL Radio with us. But John is because he did some stuff with him last fall. John, is the head coach for Memphis, the Showboats, and their team went great. But I'll tell you what, the UFL ratings, I cannot believe how good their TV ratings were. That kind of surprised me.
All right, man. Well, it's a happy hour Friday, always with Adam Caplan for Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. You can get that on all podcasting platforms. And as he just said, the Patreon, and don't forget the YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
All right, Adam Caplan, everybody.